love your YouTube. I love the your Instagram. If you could, for those that may not be familiar with you, just say a few words, about yourself and how you came to dismantle patriarchy.
Oh, thanks so much. Um, well, I'm Goddess Akasha, of course, and I have been on a journey to elevate the mass consciousness. So I have been teaching the Black woman is God for, I would say, maybe 4 years, something about that much. I've been trying to help break the mold in what we think we should express as, how we should live, how we should relate to one another. Basically, just trying to get us to stand up on our own, basically to get out of the game, basically to help our people get our strength back, come into our understanding of who we are. It's just so much that needs to be done, but I do my very best to help educate, whether it's occult knowledge, whether it's relationship, whether it's just discovering self. I've been doing that for quite some time. Like you said, YouTube, Instagram, I've been providing courses. I even finished a book, my first book, and it will be releasing on Valentine's Day because it's all about polyandry. So yeah, so these are the things that I have been doing. And of course, I have been diving into female-led relationships and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we can get into all that if you would like.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Whatever you'd like to share. To start us off, and I ask this question for like all of my guests, what is patriarchy in your own words? And just a part B to that question, what are some common habits that patriarchal thinking produces?
Well, if you look at the definition of patriarchy, it will basically tell you that it is a system or structure of government in which the male is the head or leadership of the household or government structure of a society, right? I basically break the word down, patri and archy. So patri meaning father and archy meaning rule. So the same thing with matriarchy, you can break that down to mother rule, but I think it's a misconception in what we are living in now, as far as whether we're living in a patriarchy or a matriarchy. Like a lot of times you will hear a lot of men argue that we're in a matriarchy now, and that's what's harmful to everybody, right? And I think the issue is in the definition. As we read the definition on Google or Oxford Dictionary, whatever, because it says male, it makes you think that the patriarchy mindset is exclusive to the gender, the male gender or the sex, right? But it is not. It's really, in my terms, it's a mental disorder. It's really a mentality that you have to have, and it's not exclusive to one particular person, whether it's male or female. It is something that can be within any particular person that is suffering from the conditioning of the patriarchy, right? So even if we have mothers who pass down harmful ideals to their sons, oh, you shouldn't cry, oh, this, that, those type of things, what we're really seeing is her having a patriarchal mind and passing that on, even though she's a woman. You know what I mean? So if we see women dominating in the Black church or in professions as teachers in schools and education system, or she's the one in corrections, women are most of the CEOs, or you know what I mean? So we get a lot of blame put on women, and it's assumed that we are in a matriarchy because women are dominating these particular professions or areas. But it's the mentality that's really harmful. Everyone, both men and women, have had the patriarchal conditioning, which is father rule. And it wouldn't have been an issue if a man rules, if he had the female principle guiding his thought process, right? So you see how you and other men are taking the time to get to know yourself, understand the femininity within yourself, understand how you can be compassionate and nurturing to other people. You know what I mean? That is you understanding your femininity and not having it hurt your ego or who you are as a man. Like, you know what I mean? So it's really a mentality. It's not exclusive to a particular gender or sex, right? So if you, or if men in general understood that to be a leader is to provide guidance for the person that has entrusted you with their safety or understanding, then we would have better leadership, and it wouldn't even matter if a man was to rule or to be head of a household. But because male or father rule thrives off the principle of dominating or to control or to be above another, you know what I mean? It creates a ideology of conflict, competition, of I above we. Just that simple understanding of I before we, it takes away the ability to be empathetic, and it causes you to have it causes you to have an inability to see how your actions or words affect another person. So this is why I think it's more of a mental disorder, because it's opposite from the way the human physiology is supposed to work.
I really like that. One shout out to my wife Aza in the comments. I appreciate you, sweet pea. So I run into this a lot because there's a lot of, or there's a significant amount of single parent homes, a lot of them led by the mother. It's put out there like, oh, the Black community specifically is a matriarchy, you know what I mean? And one, it's very interesting to say that when the overall context of America is patriarchal. So when you leave your house, you're going to a male run industry, male owned economic system, male dominated political system. If you go to church, it's a you go to worship a male gendered God, but yet once you get into the walls of your home, all these things are supposed to magically go away, and now you're in a matriarchy in this kind of 600-foot plot of land. There's this this and like, we don't bring those ideas into the household, and a lot of times it can even be more patriarchal sometimes in a single mother home, because the father is this imaginary figure who can be perfect, who can be this knight in shining armor that if he was there would save us, and then when the kids go to see him, it's all fun and dandy, but reality is actually left with the mother, all the flaws, all the responsibility, and all the criticism. And so it's just amazing how we come to the conclusion that that's a matriarchy. Can you talk a little bit more about the difference between patriarchal principles in leadership and matriarchal principles in leadership? Because I think that's something that really gets misunderstood.
Yeah, you can tell simply by, well, I like to go straight into the Bible, right? Because a lot of our identity of what leadership comes from, or the blueprint to life, is the Bible. We go straight to our spirituality. So when we look at what leadership is supposed to be, we learn from the male God that leadership is, I set rules. You are to follow those rules. If you do not follow those rules, you will be punished. That is a simple and basic breakdown of what leadership is, which it has been put into our subconscious of what leadership is. So if we go back to, group projects when we were in school, when the teacher would assign 4 people to a group project, there would be 2 different ways in which we can operate to get the project done. And usually we would either pick a leader, and then the leader would assign roles to each person, or everyone would try to work together equally. So it would be like, well, how would we be able to get the project done, and how would we be able to all get an A, right? And what happens is, there's 2 different types of leaders. There's one leader who will try to take over and be like, you know what? I know the best, and I'm the smartest, so I know what's best for everyone. So I need you to do this, I need you to do this, and I need you to do that. right? The problem with that is there's no um, concept of taking into, perspective what each person offers or asking them what they would like to do. You know what I mean? So there's no understanding that each person has their own autonomy. You know what I mean? Even if you think you know best, even if you think, oh, according to my grades, I should be the smartest in the class, there would be, there should be an ounce in your mind that will tell you, you know what? I should ask this person what they would like to contribute to the project. I shouldn't just dominate or control or figure out on my own and then just make people work for me because I think that would be best. You know what I mean? So that mindset of I rule and everyone should be working in tandem with my thought process, that's one type of leadership. And the other type of leadership is the one where it sees all the cogs in the machine as people, where you would ask them, what job would you like? Or I can see in you what you're good at. You're good at this, you're good at that. I think you might thrive in those areas. What would you like to work on? You know what I mean? So it's different types of leadership, and it really just bases it on your personal perspective, your mentality of how you view yourself and how you view other people.
Wow. So that really, like, as you were talking, it seemed like patriarchy has a close relation to like capitalism and imperialism and all these other systems, because it's
Mm.
literally do as I say, not as I do, and do as I say at pains of punishment, or
Mhm.
this power that I hold over you. It's authoritarianism.
Yes, and all of those things are all symptoms of the root, right? All symptoms of a root. Like I look at it as a tree, right? A tree has branches and then it has all these leaves and things on top of it. So from the root, you get all these different branches, and then you'll have capitalism, then you'll have misogyny, then you'll have sexism, then you'll have all these things will come into it from the one root, which is I know best. You know what I mean? Every
Mhm.
person, every people who colonized another nation did so because they thought they were right. You know what I mean? And I realized this also. I was watching this show last night. I don't know if you watched it before. Stargate. Have you heard of it?
I saw the movie. I didn't get into the series, but I know the movie.
The movie, right? Okay, so when you get into the series, you'll notice that it's basically us Americans, us on our high horse, going to other galaxies and worlds, and on these little adventures, we're supposed to be going there to learn of the other cultures, right? So that we can create alliances. But when we get there, we may learn of their culture and decide from our moral compass that, oh, what they're doing is wrong. So then we have to do something about it to make them right, so that the way in which they live their lives and their customs would fit our idea of what is right. You know what I mean? And that's something
Mhm.
I noticed. They have the greatest intentions to want to help. You know what I mean? But I realized that as I'm watching it, that this is a colonizing show. And and you can't even tell. You can't even tell. It's really, really interesting because the mindset, they don't even realize that they're going into a place that is peaceful. It's operating in a just way. No one feels slighted. It's basically what we would call utopian or perfect. But some foreign person will come and say, no, that's not right. You have to change it. You know what I mean? So
Right.
when colonizers come to indigenous, countries, and they're like, well, I want to bring the Bible to you. I want to make sure I save your soul by Jesus Christ. They really think they have the best intentions. You know what I mean? So that's
Right.
this is why I say it's a mental disorder. You know what I mean? So the alpha male trying to be head of household, in his relationships is doing it because he truly believes within himself that if he isn't leading the woman is lost. You know what I mean? She has no idea what she wants. She her brain is just shut off. And if I'm the proper man, then I'll lead her into salvation. You know what I mean? I'll
Right.
take care of her. She's basically an invalid. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with the white power structure versus, you know, black people. Like the term black, if you look at the Black Laws Dictionary, black just means, you know, like you're not a person, or it means that you have the mind of a child. So uh, you need an attorney to speak for you, because then you would be able to you can't represent yourself. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because you're a child. So everything is I know best, and every structure that this country is based on is I know best. So every person is conditioned under that ideology of, well, he must know best. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So that's how it spreads. So all of these things is just symptoms of one problem.
I was that great point with science fiction. Like when I it hit me when, because I'm a sci-fi fan. Like I loved I grew up on Star Wars, Star Trek, anything star related. I was watching as a kid, and as I got older, I was like, wait a minute, where are the black people? Like in a lot of science fiction, there literally are no black people, or the
Mhm.
black people in the show are actually represented by the aliens. Like I remember
Mhm.
this show, Enemy
Mhm.
Minds, where it was like
Mhm.
these warring races were battling, and these two alien, a human and an alien, got stranded on a planet together. Of course, the human was a Caucasian. The
Mhm.
alien that looked like a lizard was dark skinned, of course, and was played
That's
by a black
how
man,
depicted, yes.
right? And so many science sci-fi play out that way, and it's the kind of it assumes a dystopian future, and this is the aftermath after the genocide, after
Mhm.
the purging. Then we get into enlightenment and can go out and colonize other planets. Like that's a good word. Um,
Right, right, exactly.
yeah,
Colonize, honestly, the way that it's used in sci-fi is, oh, we're just trying to find a new home. It sounds innocent. You know what I mean? You would
right.
think that they're going there to, you know, coexist with the indigenous that live there. But colonize in itself is to impart yourself or impose yourself onto another. That's really what it means. It means to take over. It's more like a virus that engulfs your white blood cells. You know what I mean? That's what colonize is. It comes in and takes over the system, and now you become or you mutate into the image of the colonizer.
Absolutely. That actually brings up one of the questions. I'll go out of order a little bit, but I wanted to talk about, patriarchal habits with regards to the environment, right? Because,
Mhm.
you know, in these sci-fi movies where we have to go where no man has gone before, no man, and colonize other planets, and a lot of them it's because we ruined Earth, right? Earth
Yes.
is no longer inhabitable, so now we
Mhm.
have to go to Mars, or we have to live on a space station or things of that nature. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because we actually see some billionaires starting this process where they're getting their own private spaceships and the
Mhm.
like. So, what are first of all, where does patriarchy go wrong in relation to shit to the earth? And what are some of those habits? And then what are some habits we can use to replace that in our minds and also in our actions as far as how we relate to Mother Earth?
Well, it starts with that blueprint I mentioned, which is the Bible, right? So the Bible says that God made man or gave him dominion over the earth, right? That one sentence, that one verse, I believe is the subconscious root to why the man acts the way he does against the earth, the animals, and other people.
Mm.
So, because he feels he has dominion over, or he's top of the food chain, quote unquote, um, because honestly, if you really think about it, humans are not the top of the food chain in nature. Not really. No, we can
Hmm.
be eaten. If we were to live
Right.
in nature, we can easily be
Very
eaten
easily.
very easily. Um, we can easily just be smacked if we was in the way of a silverback gorilla. But it's the audacity that comes in this particular disorder that says, well, I view myself as top of the food chain. So I'm going to make myself top of the food chain. I'm going to create borders so that, there's a separation between nature and civilization. I'm going to create a whole new idea of what is right and what isn't right. So basically everything that's natural is wild, savage. It comes from comparing people to animals, right? So just looking at the earth itself as nothing, just like saying, if you were to call someone dirt, you're basically being derogatory towards them. So
Right.
there is no inherent appreciation or reverence for our environment in general. You know what I mean? So when it comes to our earth, we pollute everything because we don't see it as a living organism. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
because we don't see it as a living organism that lives and breathes and has a pulse, then we treat it as nothing. It's the same thing as white people treating black people. You don't see it as organisms. So we pollute our oceans, we cut down our trees, burn down our forests. We do everything just to create space for more cows, so we can have more beef, more burgers, so we can eat, because we are consumers. We consume. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like we have become a parasite to our organism, which is our environment. You know what I mean? And that is not the way in which societies used to live before colonization. So before colonization, every indigenous nation was able to live in harmony with earth and give back. Like, people have to understand that humans are a part of an ecosystem with earth, just as trees are a part of an ecosystem or animals are a part of an ecosystem. If you take an element out, the whole ecosystem would be out of whack and it would die out. You know what I mean? But if humans disappear, the earth would thrive. And the reason being is because we're doing more harm than we are living in harmony with. You know what I mean? So everything that we're doing just doesn't even make sense. So like, even we plant male trees that doesn't produce food. You know what I mean? So now we have to buy our food, but food is provided. You know what I mean? Even with water, everything is provided. We put plastics everywhere. We're choking the oceans. You know what I mean? And we're also hunting our fish for sport, not just to, just to eat, but we're hunting it for sport. We're hunting animals for sport. Species are going extinct. So things are happening to the point where now the earth is fighting back, if you will. You know what I mean? So we're going to be going through, if it hasn't started already, we're going to be going through apocalyptic times, or what you would say hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, things like that, because it's trying to regulate itself, much like a body that has a foreign entity entering it that's making it sick. So it's going to have to start creating more white blood cells to try and fix the ecosystem or the environment within the blood to make the organism healthy again. So that's what we're doing. And this is something that we learned from the patriarchy, because we learn consumerism, which is take, give me, give me, give me, from the patriarchy. Like, we don't give anything back. Like, our excrement is actually supposed to go back to the earth. Our urine, our fecal matter, our menses, they're all supposed to go back to the earth and actually be transmuted as energy and nutrients for the surrounding plants and life that's in the earth.
That's I don't know why, like, as you were talking, and I think I'm like in a movie set frame of mind now. I was thinking about 300, and he was like, give them nothing, but take from them everything, right? And that's kind of, and of course they're on the battlefield, but I think part of patriarchy is you never really get off that battlefield.
Right.
And
Yeah.
even when you're at home, you're
Mhm.
taking from the people around you, and you're not really giving out that same energy. You're not really feeding the people around you in a way that um, helps them to grow, not just financially. Because if you reduced yourself down to I'm a paycheck, you know what I mean, and I'm basically a living sphere, you don't have that the rest of the emotional components needed to help them to grow into just complete human beings because you're not a complete human being.
Exactly.
So that is a
Exactly.
I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, I like these movies too. I love 300. One thing I love about 300 is, especially historical fiction, these type of these movies,
Yeah,
is because it shows you different aspects. One thing that you notice from that movie is that the oracle that they all consult to know whether to go to war or not is always a woman,
right.
an untouched woman. That's very unique. Understand that usually the oracles are virgins, or notice the virgin is also the one who births Christ.
Right.
So that is basically synonymous with understanding that her powers come from the spiritual realm. So it doesn't have to be, she shouldn't be touched, because once she's touched, she actually loses her ability to see with her third eye. So that's basically her coming into, like, I'm trying to make an analogy as to why that is. But it's basically like, you know how the Bible says, be in the world but not of it.
Right.
That's kind of what that's like. So basically, she's a spiritual entity, but she's not supposed to be um, incorporated with the humans and do what the humans do, because the level of consciousness that they're on, if she were to partake in it, then she would be putting herself on that level, which is the level of illusions. Okay, so everything that we see, we think it's physical, but it's really just a projection of our minds.
So I got a question there. So
Mm-hmm.
on the topic of virginity, because
Mm-hmm.
on these TikTok streets, the whole body count conversation takes on a life of its own, right? So what's with the obsession? Does that lend to the obsession with virginity, or that perceived purity culture where it's like, oh, I want an oracle of my own, but not necessarily trying to acknowledge that power?
Um, yes, that is basically the male. It goes into pedo stuff. It does, but it's really just the male saying there is a power that I want that I do not have the ability to have. So I need to have control of that power, no matter what it may be. It's the same as taking something that's more powerful than you and then putting it in a cage, which is why they will take a woman who is doing better than them, no matter and no matter what spirit it may be, and they'll try to dim her light, like a beautiful woman, and then be like, okay, well, once you come to me, you're gonna have to start dressing different. You can't have these kind of friends. You can't talk to these people. I don't want you going to these spaces anymore. Like, once you with me, you're mine, and now you have to be in this particular in this box that I set for you. So it's the same thing with the oracle or the purity culture. It's really subconsciously based in the man trying to have control over a power that he doesn't have any access to. So he's trying to have access to that power. But it comes across, and it comes across nowadays more it comes across more like, okay, I want someone younger, someone who hasn't been touched. They don't really understand why they have that desire for that inexperience. Why they feel it's more attractive. They don't know why it's more attractive, because it's a subconscious desire.
I
You know
see.
what I mean? Yeah, but
No,
it does
no.
translate into, oh, I end up wanting a child. I like the innocence. But what they're really seeing is divinity through that child. Because children are closest to God, right? Because they just got here. So they still have the aura from the other dimensions, which they're not fully dulled by this existence yet. So
No,
it's attraction.
So, and forgive me because I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I'm gonna continue to go there.
No,
So
go
now, when we
ahead.
talk about the inner child, right? The inner child
Mhm.
of the male or female, where our society is almost set up to deaden that inner child, where it's almost like
Mhm.
um, you develop a form of narcissism because you don't have that inner emotional connection anymore. So you're
Mhm.
going after it through other people or
Yeah.
trying to control it. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about like narcissism and its relation to patriarchy?
Oh, narcissism is it's like patriarchy as a reflection. Like, you know how we all have our astrological charts, our signs and everything. Like, I would say that narcissism is the sun sign of the patriarchy. It's how you show up in the world.
Wow.
It's basically like because the patriarchy can be, it can be overt and it can be covert, right? Just like the narcissist. So it can come off as domineering, like I want to control you, and then it also can come off as, well, I'm not really trying to control you, but I'm gonna do it in a backhanded kind of way. Like, I'm really gonna usurp power over you, but I'm not gonna do it in a way in which you can tell.
Hmm.
But I have to have the power though, like, because I'm more powerful than you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's an
Right.
arrogant type of, I'm more powerful than you, but I'm not going to try and control you, but I am more powerful than you, though. You know, so it's kind of like that. So to me, it's one and the same.
I'm gonna catch up on our comments real quick because we got a
Mhm.
couple different ones here. So let's see. So our King Solver says, I know it hurts, but we have to cease teaching an Abrahamic worldview because divinity prevents scrutiny. Asa says, capitalism and consumerism, they replace collectivism with aggressive individualism.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
our King Solver says, God disrupts reciprocity because we credit its benevolence for our survival. Going down here. And their goal is to, Asa says, their goal is to control and ultimately ruin the very innocence and power they perceive. Our King Solver says, which is also the pitfall of the nuclear family. It creates competitive cells rather than the expanded community it's promised. If we could, can you talk a little bit about like the nuclear family versus other family structures?
Yeah. Okay. I just had to turn the fan on because I'm hot.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So the nuclear family, um, is something. Is more of a later invention, much like the patriarchy is a later invention. It is really, because you got to think about marriage. Once we define marriage, we have to understand what marriage is. Marriage is an alliance, it's a contract, right? It has always been a contract. It has always been a something to show possession, right? So when we think about marriage, you have the man, and usually in traditional cultures, he would either give a dowry or basically go to the family of said wife and basically say, well, you know, he's basically trying to prove to her family that he can take her and take care of her as his possession. He's going to prove that he can take care of. He's basically replacing her father or her family, right? So once he has a wife, he is now a status symbol for that man. And that's why a lot of times the more wives a man has, the higher his status, because it shows that he can take care of a lot of property. Right? So this is also why a lot of times when we think of monarchies, different kingdoms or nations would marry off their children to a rival country to establish a lifelong alliance, because that's what marriage is. So when we're thinking about marriage, it's a very recent concept that um, it would involve love or romance. You know what I mean? I think that's more recent. I can't tell you the day in which it started, specifically, but I know it is more recent as a concept because every other nation has always done it for political reasons, right? So that means that the family structures were different if they did it for the nation or the society in which they lived in. So if this particular society needed something from this particular tribe, and they was already married but they needed an alliance, they would also add on another wife or another husband, and then we would have polygamous families, and that was actually more natural and common to a lot of different societies, no matter which culture you are thinking about, whether you're thinking about Tibetan culture, Indian culture, Asian culture, African culture, no matter which country, right? Because I would beg to say that 100% of Africa was polygamous, and it doesn't matter which way, right? Both polygyny and polyandry. Same thing with Native Indians, North America, South America, Canada, everything I could think of, everybody had a clan type of household where people would be working together, which is why it takes a village to raise a child is a common proverb, because everyone understood that there would be many people around. You as a child was not possessed by just your two parents. Like even now when we have a kid, our kids, the patriarchy teaches us that our kids is our possession, which is why a lot of men have issues with dating women who already have kids, because it's like, well, that ain't mine and I'm not taking care of that one. Whereas if we had the same mentality as back in the day where we were matriarchal peoples, a man seeing a child would want to make sure it's okay and care for it, no matter whether it's from his particular blood or not. You know what I mean? So the mentality is different. So the nuclear family is a new concept and based upon the patriarchal mind that says, well, these are the things that I own. This is all mine. So this woman is mine. These kids is mine. Anything outside of that is not mine. If she had kids before me, that's not mine.
Wow. And I only value what is mine.
Yes, I only value what is mine. This is what I made. I made it. It's mine. So it has a lot to do with bragging, you know, a lot to do with the man trying to continually convince himself that he is of value.
Wow. Wow. How does what we believe impact the reality we experience? Like, just, you know, taking a step back for a moment, like our beliefs, what we put our faith into, like how do our beliefs impact the outcome of our reality?
Well, our beliefs is the seed of our reality. And that goes into whether you understand quantum physics or not or whatever. But if you understand the power of your mind, you would understand that you are the one who creates your reality. So you can see something like this as, you know, two people, you know, can go through a situation together, but they will easily come out of it with different perceptions of what happened in that particular situation. But each are 100% affected by what they thought happened. They each can be suffering from trauma of the situation based off of their perception of what happened. Even if it didn't happen the way they thought it happened, because they saw it that way and they believe it happened that way, they were affected that way. And the best way I can explain this, or the scientific proof, is the placebo effect. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it shows the power of the mind and how you can easily, once you think something and believe something, it becomes true. It doesn't even matter if it's not true or not. People could be taking sugar pills and think that it's actually affecting their body, and they could be seeing, you know, results, you know? So yes, our reality is basically just a reflection of our mind.
Okay. So this is my part two. So given that, right? How do you think belief in a male gendered God has affected the way men and women relate to themselves, each other, and the world around them?
Yes. Same thing. So because we have learned that our cosmic parent, which is what God is our cosmic parent, and we look to our cosmic parent to emulate. We look to our parent to understand who we are and what to do. Like, what are we supposed to do in this life? Who are we? You know what I mean? And because we look to our parent for that, in this life, we also look to our cosmic parent for that. So if our cosmic parent is someone who is aloof, who kind of only is he's basically a disciplinary. He tells you what to do, gives you rules, a set rules. If you don't follow them perfectly, you do not get a reward in the end, and you actually get a punishment, an eternal punishment. So if we learn that, we subconsciously become that. We become overlords of our lives. We become overlords of our bodies. So if our bodies isn't doing something, like say we feel pain, because we must have control of everything, instead of thinking about what that pain may mean or what caused it, we'd much rather go get a pill and subdue the pain and take care of the symptoms and forget about how our bodies could be reacting to whether it's environmental or whatever. We don't care to learn what our body is trying to tell us to listen. So we're going to try and dominate our own selves. And then the same thing would also be with the people around us. If you say or do something I don't like, then my retaliation to that could be, you know, the punishment that's well deserved. It could be physical, verbal, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? So we also create these structures, even when it comes to, you know, economically, the corporate world, everything is based on a structure that if you do not act in this particular way, then there will be penalties. If you take too many days off, if you come in late, if you speak to a coworker this way, you know, if you ask too many questions, it's always a penalty to you acting in a way in which I did not dictate. So this is a reflection of us having a cosmic parent that is a man who only has taught us and shown us that we're supposed to give instruction, follow instruction, and if we're not following the instruction, then we are to be punished. That's what we learned. If our cosmic parent is the mother, which it was before colonization, then what do we see in those societies? We see people taking care of each other. We do not see rape culture being rampant, even though people did not wear much clothes back then.
Yeah.
We see families coming together. We see people not looking at other people as possessions. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very different environment based off of our cosmic parent. So if our cosmic parent taught us to see everything as sacred, right? Then
Right.
if we were to, you know, hunt or unalive an animal so that we can eat, to consume, we actually pray to ensure and help guide the spirit of that animal back to the ether. So there is a difference in how we see and view life. There's a gratitude, there's a reverence, there is a sacredness to everything. You know, we're not just stomping around, digging up and mining and trying to get oil and stuff, pulling oil out of the earth just because we want fuel. That's not what we did. And that's something that we do now because of our cosmic parent has changed.
Right.
Right. So yeah.
That's okay. And I got kind of almost got beside myself when I was on a live a few days ago, because we were talking about like grape culture, and it was essentially a few men denying that grape culture existed.
Of course.
And it's interesting to me because on the one hand, you will have, and I won't say just men, it can be women too, where they're like this gender war, which, first of all, anytime something is labeled a war, odds are it's been labeled that way on purpose and not by us, right? So the war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on terrorism, all of these are engineered wars by the powers that be, by the people who always engineer wars, right? So when we talk about gender war, I don't think it's definitely not something that women came up with, right? If it's
right.
But to end this quote unquote gender war, why don't we just move on to the solution? We just got to move on to the solution. Why do we keep talking about the problem? On the other hand, you have people that will deny that patriarchy even exists, will deny that rape culture even exists, and it's like, no, we're not there yet. We're not there until people can acknowledge some basic facts, right? And anytime there's a war, that's one of the first things that happen. You have mass unalivings and you have mass grape. You know what I mean? You look at what happens in Africa, mass unalivings and mass grape, and don't think that that's not something that also happens here in America. So it just takes me aback sometimes when we get into this kind of double bind where it's like, oh, we got to move forward, but people haven't caught up yet to the most basic thing.
Yeah, the moving forward is the taking a step back, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, in order to move forward, we have to look to the past to learn. It's the same thing as if we were to be the rulers of the country, we would have to look at the things that we have done to figure out what mistakes we've made so we don't make them again. You have to learn from your mistakes. So that means you have to look back. Same thing if we all go to therapy. What do the therapists first want to talk about? Your childhood. What happened? Right. You know what I mean? So the same thing with this particular issue with, men versus women or whatever. It's like I said to you, the perpetrators or the colonizers or the predators don't know that they're doing anything wrong. So if you were to come to them and tell them, you're a monster, they're going to say, me? Oh no, that can't be me. I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's going to be hard to move forward if that's the approach that we're taking. So the approach that we have to take can't be, well, this is the problem. We have to treat it more so as a sickness rather than actions of intentionality. You know what I mean? We have to take it more as that because, again, and I'm thinking of both men and women because, like I said, it's a conditioning that everyone received. And only a select few can break out of it. Both men and women can break out of it, right? So it's like, well, we have to make sure we are treating it as a virus that infiltrated their mind. So we have to say, well, we have to break it down to, well, when you were young, what happened here? If this situation was to happen, what would you do here and why? Like, basically ask more questions rather than, point the finger or tell them what they did wrong. Because most likely they don't see what they did is wrong. Same thing with white people. They don't think that what they did was wrong. They think that everything they did was fine.
So to carry on with that thought, like for a person who might be listening right now, how would they know? What are some of the symptoms to know that you have this disease, right? And then what are some ways of I guess, healing yourself once you know that you have this infection?
Okay, well, I can relate that to my personal journey, right? I went through different spiritual paths. One of the most recent ones was Hebrew Israelism, or whatever you want to call it, right? The Black Hebrew Israelites. That was me. I was like, Jesus is black. That was me. And what drew me to that was seeing our men march together. I was just like, I love the unity. I love the unity. So I went there and I was going to classes and everything, right? One thing that I've learned, because I was already a patriarchal girl before I got there. But once you get in there and you start following all the laws of the Bible, it's like they turn up patriarchy to notches, 100 notches. You know what I mean? So once I was experiencing it and following the laws, doing everything, I started to realize a difference in my character. Like, I'm not in class, I'm walking down the street, and I'm noticing that I'm looking at women. This is summertime. I'm looking at women with booty shorts with the booties hanging out, butt cheeks. And I'm in the little Caribbean. I got Caribbean in my family. That's normal. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's hot outside. course she's gonna hang out, right? But I'm walking down the street, and in my mind, I'm like, ugh. Once I did that, I checked myself. And I'm like, I never was the type to judge another woman on what she's wearing. Why am I doing that? You know what I mean? And I had to realize that that is a symptom of my most recent programming. That's when I knew that this was not natural. That's when I was just like, something is wrong here. Once you start looking at another person and you are placing yourself on a pedestal to where everyone else is below you, everyone else is less intelligent, everyone else is less righteous, everyone else is beneath you in some way, that's how you know something is wrong within yourself.
Right.
So you have that it didn't take me much. It didn't take me much to realize that that was wrong. Like, you know what I mean? But you have to realize that on your own. I think a lot of people go through that, they live that, and they don't even realize it. You know what I mean? Because we have gossiping, we have, you know, these type of things where we talk about each other all the time. But it was unnatural for me, you know? So I was just like, this does not make sense. So if we in general want to figure out what the symptoms are, it's all about being able to listen to the voice that's in your head. What is it saying, and do you agree with it? You have to be able to observe what's happening within yourself. Like, take yourself out of yourself and look at yourself as a third person. Like, if you were to, just like if you're dreaming, a lot of times you're not the first person dreaming. Sometimes you're the third person outside of yourself, viewing yourself do things. You have to look at yourself in that way. You know what I mean? And be able to judge yourself and be like, is that me? Is that natural? Is that what I consider to be right or good? Right? And once you realize that what you're doing and saying and thinking is not natural, you know what I mean? Like, hold on. Am I looking at that other person as a thing? Am I looking at that other person as they're beneath me? And why am I thinking that? Like, you just have to take the time to judge yourself. Most people don't want to do that.
Right. No, I was a radical Christian, not Hebrew Israelite, but more so on like a Reformed theology, you know, side of things. And I literally thought, you know, everyone that didn't accept Jesus Christ was on their way to a fiery eternity of torture and just living death, right? And I got married the same year I became a Christian. And because of the way I internalized Christianity, based on, you know, in some way the way it was taught, I completely leaned into the church and completely did not lean into my marriage, right? And did that for 10 years, you know what I mean? Just pushing forward, trying to pull souls out of the fire, as we say. And we were always in the church, you know what I mean? Wednesday, Sunday, Saturday, Monday, you know what I mean? Cleaning, whatever we needed to do. And I got to the point, because I was sing, you know what I mean? Sing with much of my family. And I felt like I was just being drained, just drained the energy, just drained everything. And I you know what? I'm going to take a break. Is how I first formed it, as I told my pastor. And I took a break for 1 month. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 6. And what I noticed was, like, nobody called me. No one checked on me. No one.
Right.
And what I came to the conclusion was like, wow, I spent 10 years of my life just about spending all of my time here. And I almost have no authentic connections with anyone. You know what I mean? No relationships, because once I stepped, and that's how I realized, okay, I was in a sort of a cult, because that's how cults operate. Once you disconnect from the group's tenets, they excommunicate you, either officially or unofficially. You are anathema. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I thought I was practicing the truth. And that led me, as I began to deconstruct those beliefs, it eventually, now I was getting on the TikTok at the same time, eventually led me to deconstructing sexism and misogyny, because I kept coming to the same things. We got racism. Racism was, the Bible was used to justify racism. The Bible was used to justify homophobia. It was used to justify misogyny. And so and all of this was from a male-centered God. So it was wild to me. But those are my symptoms, you know what I mean? And I had, basically all over my body. Can you talk a little bit about how to break the habits associated with patriarchal conditions, and how did you arrive at the truth that the Black woman is God?
Well, it was after me leaving the Israelite church or school, they call it, right? It was basically me taking just time to re-regulate my body, because my body was, you know how when you're, like you said, you was in the church for 10 years.
Yeah.
When you're in that particular environment, you said it was draining. It creates a permanent state of anxiety, because you're always trying to uphold a particular image in which you've been told you're supposed to be, you're supposed to live out. So because you're always trying to uphold that image, you also hold everyone else to the same standards, which is what makes you look at them as lesser than you, which is why you walk around with this higher than thou, high morality, high righteousness feeling, which simultaneously makes you feel good, and it also drains you, because it's not you living in your natural state of being. You know what I mean? So you have to first come out of that and then relax, because that's what I did. You have to relax. You have to not take in any media, stop listening to everything, don't watch the news, don't talk to friends or family. You have to take a moment of isolation to listen to yourself first. It's the first thing you have to do, because as you listen to other things, you're taking in things, and it's altering who you are. You know what I mean? It's altering who you are, whether you think it is or it's not, but it is. It's being downloaded into your subconscious like a computer. So you have to make sure you rid yourself of the old programming first. And then after you've done your isolation time, whether it's been a month, 2 to 3 months, whatever, then you start on your journey of discovery after that. So you want to make sure now you're going to be intentional about what you take in, what media you take in, because guess what? Everything is a cult. Okay? Everything is a cult. Our government is a cult. Any particular group that all believe in the same thing and all abide by the same rules and tenets, they're a cult. Okay? It's just what this society deems a harmful cult to my cult, or a cult that I can align myself with. So it's either whether you're deemed harmful or not, whether you can be a rival or not to the powers that be, right? So that's why a lot of times when you think about, that's why they say church and state don't mix, because they want to make sure you're not doing any political uprising. You know what I mean? Talk about whatever you want to say, but don't touch this area over here, you know? But yes, everything is a cult. Everything has the power to influence you to think other than yourself. So you have to just break away from whatever it is, right? To deprogram yourself from the patriarchal conditioning. Whether it's silence, they also have these dark rooms that I haven't experienced yet, but I'm looking into doing that. But you can make your own dark room if you really want. Just be in yourself. If you could be off work, that would be great. But yeah, you have to just give yourself time to re-regulate your body, your nervous system, right? To relax. Then after that, you want to get into reading, understanding who you are. What I did was I ended up going into my family history, because I wanted to know, well, where did white people come from and why they act like that? That was my question.
Okay.
So I had to go into, well, let me just, before I go through all the theories of how humans got here, let me go into my own ancestry. That's when I learned that I was Native, and I stem from the Shinnecock Nation, which is here in America. Okay. And so me learning that, I'm like, well, what was their customs? What did they believe? What did they do? Right? So I go down that rabbit hole. And then I start going down a rabbit hole of, well, what were humans like before we were colonized? Obviously, if my family was like this a certain way, this was here and here, you know. And once I started doing a bunch of reading and understanding that all nations went through the same thing, whether it was the Dutch, the Persians, you know, whoever colonized whatever land, the mentality of the colonizer is, well, this is mine. I'm here to save you as people. If you don't want to be saved, then you don't need to be here. You know? And basically everyone's original identity was stripped. Not just ours as Black people, but everybody's. You know what I mean? So I went through that. Basically learning about all the different cultures that I can, which I'm still doing research and learning right now. And I basically came across the understanding that all nations used to worship the mother. All nations understood the fertility of the earth. All nations saw spirit in everything. All nations venerated the womb. That's why we have mounds where people would actually go in, and that would be the representation of going back into the dust, as we call it now. Like, we dig people 6 feet deep, but before we wasn't doing that. Before, we would build mounds, and that's how we would bury our dead. And they would be put in fetal position, not laying straight like this. They would be in fetal position. So it would basically be a return to the cosmic womb after you were to transition from here. So everything that I learned, and that's just the archaeological aspect of me learning of what this planet used to see as truth. Same thing with, you know, seeing the earth is flat, or understanding that time is cyclic. See, you know, time is cyclic. You know, knowing that women is the first timekeepers. Understanding that, you know, the moon phases is the same as the menstrual cycle. Like, it's all the same stuff. So basically the way of the woman, or the feminine principle, is basically the laws of nature, and that's how everyone lived, no matter which culture they were living in.
So I want to just check at our comment section real quick. See Free Palestine. Okay, big ups to that. Our King Solver said it costs us opportunity and joy because it's actually just supremacy. Okay, we're caught up. We're caught up. We're good. I wanted to lead into that, actually, when you talk about time. Like, what habits does patriarchal thinking produce with regards to how we perceive time, and how has mankind learned to think about and potentially distort history as a result of patriarchy?
Well, the distortion of history is one thing we all know, which is history is told by the winners, right? So basically everything we learn or know, anthropologists, what we're reading is their perception of what happened. You know what I mean? So we have, our basic history goes back all the way to 1492. And that's pretty much where history begins as far as school is concerned. So it's kind of like, well, taking the time to learn anything before that, you would have to take classes or courses outside of the generic curriculum of school. So then you have to just become your own scholar, your own student, your own teacher. You know what I mean? Because again, the way in which we learn everything is based from his mind. We are an image of him, and him being just the patriarchal mind in general, which is the colonizer mind. So yes, thinking that time is linear is just a reflection of the way in which the mentality of the man is, right? So it's the same as let's see, like women have the ability to have a bird's eye view or to see a perspective from many different vantage points, whereas a
Right.
lot of times men see things in black and white. That is what I would like to call linear versus a circular perspective, which means our brains work differently. So that's kind of like having a two-dimensional mind versus three-dimensional mind, whereas you have length versus width as a two-dimensional, and then we have length, width, and height as a three-dimensional. So I kind of look at it in that particular fashion. So because he or the patriarchy sees things in this way or just simply black and white, they can't understand nuances or the gradient or the things that can happen, the fluidity of many different situations. So the judgments and things that we have when we have that mindset is very limited in general. So we learn history in that way. A lot of times we learn that conflict happened and this happened, this person won, this person lost, but we may not understand, well, why did they go to war in the first place? You know what I mean? There's a lot of questions unanswered because we're learning it in a very linear fashion. So understanding that life is cyclic, which is what the earth shows you, then it gives you a different perspective on historical events. You know what I mean? So it plays into everything. It plays into, well, why this happened. It shows why our families were more than just two parents and a child. You know what I mean? Everything is reflective of the circular fashion of us as people being connected to the earth.
That's wild. It tripped me out when I was like, when I learned about the lunar calendar, and I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? It actually makes a lot more sense than the solar calendar that we use. It's like, so many different things have just literally been changed as a result of one group trying to conquer another group and then redoing everything.
Yeah, the calendar is really only a way to remind people of taxes. That's what the calendar was for. It was made it was made so that we can know when to pay taxes on time. But before that, it was a 13-month calendar. And if I remember the which date was it? Oh my gosh, I'm bad with dates. But was it
Well, July 25th? Is it July 25th, July 24th?
I'm trying to think of the year. The year in
Oh,
which the calendar went from 13 to 12. I
okay.
can't remember exactly, but I'm gonna have to get that and I'll post it on my page or something. But the calendar changed simply for that one reason. It was meant for taxes. Whereas the lunar calendar was meant for us to be able to tell the times and seasons. Like basically a strawberry full moon in March would let us know when to start planting crops. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
the timekeeping was literally just to help us understand how to work the land, or you know what's going to be happening when we should take harvest. That's what it was, and that's why the eight Sabbats, or the witches year, the wheel of the year, is we celebrate all the different transitions of the earth. It's seasonal changes. That's all it really is. You know, when you take harvest, when you plant, you know, when it's time for us to go into hibernation, when it's time for there to be equal energy, when it's, you know, when the sun is going to be in the sky longer. All of that is based off of the natural cycles of life, not based off of when you got to pay something. Because back in the day, we didn't have to pay for stuff. You know what I mean?
So as we got more disconnected from the land, we also got disconnected from time.
Yes.
Wow. It's awesome. um, when we talk about
Everything that is now isn't supposed to be, and everything that was is what it's supposed to be.
absolutely, what what are some? We talk about our own bodies. I think we touched on this a little bit. How has mankind learned to think about their own biology as a result of patriarchy?
Well, that is another. Sorry about the music.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. So, our bodies, just like the earth, is just another territory to conquer, right? And you learn this with our medical practices. So when we are looking at, you know, how we attack diseases, or how we approach health, it's more of a well, you know what? I'm going to just do this, do this, do this. I'm just going to, make the body do what I want it to do. And if it doesn't do what I want it to do, then throw the whole person away. Let's get another person and work on that
Oh,
person. Let's work on the next person. But yeah, so it's also a place of exploring. I don't know if you know about Sarah Bartman. Sarah Bartman is a South African woman who was taken, and of course, her she was paraded around like, a circus animal, right? And after she died, her body was used for experimentations, and they had to just go in there and take everything, and they did everything, and they kept her body as like trophies, like, you know what I mean, trophies, put it in museums. Her family couldn't get her body back for quite some time, like, you know what I mean, because they
right.
owned it, so it was their property, much like artifacts that's in the Vatican or British museums. So it's still their property. Yeah, so a lot of these things, the body in itself is not a living organism, you know what I mean, it's not a living organism. It's something that you have to conquer. Again, even when it comes to trying to make clones or sleeves, as they call, so that they can prolong life. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have seen, but they have these sleeves or whatever that they are cloning or organically growing in these labs, so that you can copy your consciousness onto it and then put it into the next body, so that you can stay here forever, because your body is just, it's just a suit, it's just something else you own that you can do with whatever you want. So yeah, we don't treat our body as a living organism that protects you, because that's what it does. It does protect you. It's kind of like it has the your biological responses is a nurturing effect, much like your mother would. Like if something was to happen, your mother would cover you and protect you. That's what your body does. That's what your nervous system does. It alerts you when something is wrong. That's what your hair stands up for when there's danger nearby, or that's why women know when her man is cheating, her stomach hurt. It's like your body tells you things, you know what I mean? And it protects you from whatever it may be. But we don't treat it as a mother who's protecting us. We treat it as, something to play with.
What what are some ways to, I guess, reconnect with with the body in a way that's, I guess, more natural?
Well, the best way I have done so far is just immersing myself in nature. Once you're in nature, you can learn to hear again, learn to see again. You know what I mean? Learn to feel again. So you have to basically make yourself turn into a child. Um, I do this by going to other countries. To me, it's easier to go into other countries. Go into the jungle and just sit there. Sit there, sit by a tree, start talking to a tree. You'll start to feel some changes happen. You know what I mean? Take off your shoes. You want to ground yourself. Like, there's a documentary called Earthing. It should be on Netflix and YouTube, I believe. And it basically helps you understand that it takes away the was it the free radicals in your body, which causes stress. So when you are bearing your feet on the ground, you're actually walking in your natural state. You're not supposed to be stressed all the time. We're actually
Yeah.
stressed all the time. We're on a low level of stress all the time. We're all anxious, everybody. So when you take off your shoes, you're actually at your default natural level, which is calm. Calm, you know? And it's actually very, very healing. The same thing as getting enough sunlight. A lot of us in the United States are vitamin D deficient because we stay in all day. We have artificial light when our light is supposed to be coming from the sun. That's also what contributes to our depression, because we're not outside enough. So in order to connect with our bodies, we have to connect with nature, because that's our bigger body, which is our environment. You know what I mean? So go to the beach, sit barefoot, go to the national parks, you know, go in the forest, go in the jungles, do hikes, like, you know what I mean? Go into the ocean and just stay under there. Like, this is something I've done. This is what helped me connect with the mother a lot better, because that in itself is actually re-entering the womb, entering the mass or source consciousness, is going into the ocean, you know, holding your breath, closing your eyes, and just being under the ocean and letting the waves carry you wherever they may. Don't be afraid. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. But go in there and just start listening. Yes, you'll hear water, but the more you listen, you'll start to hear through your third eye. You know what I mean? So it's like, once you take away your outer senses, your limited senses, you will be more awakened and opened to your etheric senses.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think mindfulness practices really helped me. You know what I mean? I think like grounding and all of those things, it's like being able to just, first of all, rethinking success, right? Because I was very much success minded, very much, what do they call it? The Protestant work ethic. You know, that was me. Work, you know, be the first one there, last one to leave. And what I had to rethink is, no, sitting on a couch and just breathing is a form of success. That is an accomplishment. You know what I mean? Just inhabiting my body and being present in the moment is successful. You know what I mean? Because my mother used to tell me, don't forget to take time to smell the flowers. And it went way over my head. Way over my head. Because first of all, where are the flowers, Mom? Because there are no flowers. There's hardly any flowers where we live.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the act. That's actually your life. Your life is actually smelling those flowers and hearing the wind and smelling the breeze. All of those things is your actual life. What you think is going to happen in the future, or you remembering things that happened in the past, different traumas, that's not actually you living.
Right. You know what I mean? So, exactly.
Yeah, being able to be in the moment was so important. And it took me a very long time to learn that. And that causes stress too. Because stress is not always what's happening to us, but it's also, like you said before, it's what we perceive is going to happen, what we anticipate. So,
exactly.
Leads me to my next question. How does a person dismantle the memory of their former selves?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. One of my favorites is this is something I told people to do like years ago. Like when I first started teaching, the first thing I told people to do was to change their name. Ooh. When you change your name, you are essentially taking your power back, right? So your name is tied to other people's perception of you and the character in which you're playing. You got to understand that all of this is not real, right? Once you realize all this is not real, right? Then the character you've been playing is not real. It's a video game. So you just want to change the character. So the character that you've been playing, where you adopted these particular ideas, or you subscribe to this kind of conditioning and you acted within these things. If you are feeling like, oh, I wish I hadn't, or I wish I would have known better, that's not how you approach the, transition, right? You want to make sure you are like, okay, that was this particular character. I am stepping into a new character. So you want to separate yourself, the new you, the more enlightened you, the one who now knows better. When you know better, you do better, right? So you change your name. You have now the power to call yourself who you want to be. That's a part of manifestation, right? So whatever your name was before, whatever it meant, whatever you were called, that was a name that you didn't choose. It was given to you before you were born. So you had no control over the person that you became before. So you can't hold yourself to this particular any particular guilt or regret because of who you were before. You now that you know better, now you have the responsibility to do better now that you know better. So now you can take the right steps forward instead of holding yourself back or worrying about what happened back then. So changing your name is the first step. Pick a name that means royalty or peaceful or calm or spirit warrior or something that resonates with you and where you are on your journey right now. So that's a part of self-transformation. And then you move forward with everything from there. Of course, the mindful practices we talked about and everything else. So that's you stepping into your journey. But the first most pivotal thing to do is to change your name.
I like that. I guess part B. I always get a part B to the question. Once a man or woman decides to walk away from patriarchy, what resources might be helpful for them to reinforce this new way of thinking and being?
Oh, those resources is community. Community. Because the person that you were before was reinforced. Like, say you learned from your parents how to be, and then you went to school, and then you learned from your peers, and then you watched movies, and then you heard music, and then you saw on the news, and then like it was reinforced from every avenue. So what you have to do is recreate your environment, right? So the first thing you was doing, what we spoke about, was recreating the you within, right? But now we're speaking about the outside area, because it's very, very important that you do that. Like, your environment is called environmental psychology. It actually plays a part in who you are and how your body reacts. You know what I mean? So your environment plays a major, major role. So that means new friends. That means joining whatever you think may be helpful. There are yoga places that you can join. There is book clubs. There is, new spiritual groups, online communities, much like the ones, Facebook groups, the ones that I had a Facebook group, Instagram groups, all these things. It's all available to you if you want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you just have to basically recreate your environment and surround yourself with people who are on the same journey as you, those who are aligned with where you are consciously, those who can teach you as well. You never want to just surround yourself with people who are on just where you at. You want to make sure you can learn from everyone around you, So yes, that's pretty much it. One of the things I incorporated on my journey was I went to Goddess Club, which is an organization for women who are trying to come into themselves. You know what I'm saying? Trying to heal past traumas, no matter what it is. It was headed by Hadia Barbell, and she is someone who hailed from New York and decided to create moon circles. And she kept going, and she travels through cities and host these retreats where people can come and you can get all different types of services, and you create community with those particular like-minded people. So it's always a community for everyone. So there's ayahuasca retreats, there's all different types of stuff, so it's all about where you are on your journey.
No, excellent. No, thank you for sharing that. So I guess last question, like what would be the one thing you would want someone to take away from this conversation as far as something they could employ or use going forward?
The one thing I think that's most important from this conversation I want to highlight is the part where they understand that they're not at fault. The part where I emphasize that it is a mental disorder. I know that can hurt people's egos, right? Yeah. But patriarchy is a mental disorder that needs to be healed, not punished for, if that makes sense. So even though I may feel the earth is better off in a matriarchy or gynocracy, right? I do not believe that the patriarchy needs to be put in jails or put into slave mining camps. That's not what I think. Patriarchy to me is an illness that should be healed. So I want people to walk away from this particular conversation knowing that everyone can heal from it, if they put in that work and they want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they put in that work and they want to, if they want to heal, because there's people who just I don't feel like healing, which is fine. Go ahead, stay away from me. Thank you.
Nah, absolutely. But you should want to heal, because if you're in a diseased state, you're not being able to experience life to the fullest. It's debilitating. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's the thing. That's the thing about the patriarchy. Like, it hurts everybody, even the ones doing it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right. It's self-harm. Like, patriarchy says you have to win the tug of war, even though the rope is burning your hands and you're losing skin. That's what patriarchy tells you. You have to win. You have to win. Even though you're losing, you have to win. Even though it hurts, you be all right. Which is why we have grind culture, right? Grind culture is the one that says, oh, I sleep when I dead. Like, you know what I mean? Because you have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to basically sacrifice your spirit and your soul so that you can be successful, like you said earlier. It's changing your ideas of success. So everything that we learn from the patriarchy is detrimental to life. Life in yourself, life in others, life in our environment, our home, life in general. That's what people need to understand. Patriarchy is death. Death row.
And I think that's the tragedy of the so-called manosphere, or because it's positioned as like a male healing space, but you actually wind up doing anything but that. You know what I mean? You wind up, plugging, okay, I'm just going to work out. All these externalities. I'm going to work out. I'm going to get my money right. I'm going to get my physicality right. But you never actually go within and deal with, like, you, the person. I'm going to get spiritual. I'm going to get this religion, but never who I am. No, who do I actually want to be outside of all these other expectations, trappings, positionalities that's been put on me as a man? How do I actually get connected to who I am, who I was, where I'm going, and how do I connect with other human beings? Not just how do I become a better dominator? How do I become a better competitor? You know what I mean? So it advertises healing, but it's actually more so a training camp.
It is. It's a lot of trauma bonding too, which is why they come together and they feel, oh yeah, you get me, man. But that's trauma bonding. But it's the issue with that is, one thing about that particular mindset, like I said, is a linear mind, which remains on the surface. That's why they can't go within, because again, spirituality and understanding your spirit is inherently feminine. Anything feminine is derogatory to the man. Being in your feelings is feminine, which is bad to a man. So connecting to other humans and their spirit going within, they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. So of course, everything that is empowering to the male within the manosphere would be something that's physical on the surface level. A shallow idea of success or getting ahead. It, like you said, it's dominating themselves. Even the idea of discipline, working through pain, working through not feeling like it. They're not listening to circadian rhythms. Working through doesn't matter, because they're dominating themselves and learning to dominate their environment, which will make them feel better. Because that's the idea of what a man is based on them. They've created that definition, first of all, and now they're struggling to try and live up to it, which is why many men decide they want to quit this particular existence early. You know what I mean? Because it's detrimental to them and it's unrealistic, even though they can't even come to terms with understanding that it's unrealistic, that they can't live up to it. You know what I mean? And the reason why is because they see certain people doing it and they're like, well, if they could do it, I can do it. So I'm going to ignore everything that my body tells me. I'm going to ignore everything my spirit tells me, and I'm going to do it anyway. And if I don't do it, if I fail, then I'm not a man. You know? And again, it's just them trying to prove to themselves that they can do something that's very, very unnatural. So it's hurting them. Every day it's hurting them, and they spread this disease because they think it's right. You know what I mean? They think it's right. They think it's righteous. They think what they're doing is empowering. They think what they're doing is healing themselves. So because of their perception, it's real. It's gonna keep going on.
Want to just take a look and see if we have any questions in the comments. For those of you listening, want to say thank you so much, Goddess Akasha, for being here and sharing your wisdom. Want to just you. We got Asa says tapping into yourself and allowing spirit to lead also removes blockages because it's less ego.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great and enlightening conversation. I truly appreciate speaking to any man who is on the journey of healing and dismantling patriarchy within and outside of himself, because you are in a world where you will be dealing with outside forces who will discredit your manhood. You know, they will be looking at you like, oh, he's a simp. Oh, he's just pandering. Oh, this, that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're going to be hit with enemy forces all over the place. So it takes courage to heal yourself, and it takes courage and bravery to stand on who you are and what you're doing in this particular social climate. So this is why I say that there is strength within the divine masculine male, who our men call simps. So if that's what they want to call it, whatever.
It's crazy to me because the term simp, the first time I heard the term simp, I'll be very honest, was on a Too Short album. You know what I mean?
That's the time era, yes.
Yeah, very much in the pimp culture. And to me, yes, a simp was just the opposite of a pimp. You know, yeah. Pimp was the person that was the curator, and the simp was the customer that got out of pocket. You know what I mean? And it's crazy that many years later, it's become this overarching term for just a man that likes women or shows compassion or is polite or just like cares. Like it's crazy to me. I've had people, I've heard men call other men simps for loving their wife, for showing, for getting a gift for their girlfriend. It's like, so it's become blown way out of context. Mm-hmm. Because what it really is there's a thin line, this pathway of patriarchy, and anything that goes outside of that for a man is being a simp. If you're not this exact type of man that the society says you should be, which essentially is grooming you to be a soldier in someone else's army. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're not, then you're a simp, right? And if you're not walking this thin line of patriarchy as a woman, oh, then you're a modern woman, Jezebel, you know what I mean? Harlot spirit person that, and it's all about control. Really. It's a way for me, or it's a way for me to dismiss your ideas because I have cognitive dissonance, because what you're saying is challenging my idea of who I am and the sacrifices I've made to be that person. And, and rather than deal with that, I have to disqualify you in some way. Exactly.
It is a subconscious derivative of the pimp culture. Like you said, the pimp and the trick, right? It's basically every man within their subconscious deciding who they want to be, right? Do you want to be the man that controls all the women and has them give you their money, which is basically give you their time, their attention, their power? Basically, women giving you their power, right? Or do you want to be the one giving to the woman? And again, because that is an idea that's outside the definition of what a man is to give, is like, oh no, I don't want to give. That means I'm giving my power away, right? Because men in this particular society see money as power. So the more money you have, the more powerful you are. So again, if people are all surrounding you, giving you money, if it's women giving you money, you're going to feel power. They all look at the pimp as a deity in a sense, right? That's the same thing as the God of the Bible and all the people worshiping him and coming in offerings, giving offerings, sacrifices, whatever it may be. He is powerful because of the worship that he receives. If he was to no longer receive worship, he would no longer be powerful. Because he doesn't do anything, technically.
Right.
Doesn't do anything, really.
Wow.
But this is why there's such an emphasis on don't put no other gods before me. I am a jealous God, because he doesn't want to lose his power, which is your attention, your worship, right? So it's the same thing with men on the earth plane, right? They're all trying to be their own deity in this particular life, where they're trying to receive worship and praise from everyone. And if they do not, then they will feel minute, less powerful, like nothing, you know? So it's all about trying to feel worthy. That's what it's about. And it's sad that that is the only way that they know how to feel worthy. You know what I mean? It's really sad that that's what they've learned of what worth is, what self-worth is.
No, it was funny. I love TikTok in not overall, because TikTok does some really, F stuff. But one thing I do like is the On This Day. And it was a few days ago, on this day, 2 years ago, I was reading from Bell Hooks, The Will to Change, which is like the whole reason for the series. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about feminist manhood and how with patriarchal manhood, your value is determined on what you do, right? What you can conquer, who you can dominate, what you do in this world. And if you're not a doer, then you're not worth anything, right? Whereas feminist manhood is like, you are worthy because you are. You're worthy in your being, right? And you do out of that self-worth. It's not that you don't do. I think that's the confusion. It's like, and I was listening to some, Manosphere podcast a few days ago, and the way they conceptualized feminist manhood was these people with all these excuses on why they can't succeed, right? It's not that. It's not that you don't do. It's that you're not doing to get worth. You're worthy, and therefore you do. And,
Right. One thing that I need people to understand is that your existence itself contributes to an ecosystem, right? So everything exists in service to another, right? Everything that you give off, whether it be your aura, your wisdom, because honestly, any woman who knows what masculinity is understands what masculinity feels like. Like, just being around a man can make you feel warm, safe. You know what I mean? And he doesn't even have to be doing anything. He should be sitting there. You know what I mean? And that's what the feeling of having a father is, or a husband, or a brother. You know what I mean? Just his presence is safety. It feels warm. You know what I mean? Like, it reminds me of the sun. Like, the sun radiates steadily. It's stability that you're feeling, right? Kind of like your house. It's stable. So that's what masculinity feels like. But because the men do not know what masculinity is or who they are, it doesn't feel that way. You know what I mean? It feels scary, technically, because it's lost energy that we're feeling. It's lost energy. The men in general are lost. They don't know who they are. They don't know how to find out who they are. And they're grasping at straws as to try and be something, because they're trying to fill a void that they don't even know how it got there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why they're trying to do all these things, or work out and make more money, and this. They're trying to create that that worth of who they are on the inside. But because they're not exploring who they are on the inside, it's going to remain a gaping hole, which is why a lot of times they go straight to women to fill that void, which is why they can't be alone very long.
That's interesting. One second. I wanted to. My wife said, often those guys aren't in happily mutually fulfilling relationships. That feeling of unworthiness would diminish if they focused on being deity of and over themselves. Okay. So two things. One, it's easier to lord power over someone else than it is to harness the power of yourself, your self-governance, which is supposedly what our country was based on. It was supposed to be based on self-governance, right? Not that's it's what's sad is that I hear so many people are saying that they want a certain ex-president to be their future king, and it's like that's not what America was based on at all. It's supposed to be based on self-governance, but it's easier to exert discipline over other people because you can just at the pain of a knife or a gun, say you're going to do this and then not have any responsibility or accountability yourself. Whereas with you sit with yourself all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it takes a lot more effort to have self-governance. Do you have any tips or, I guess, insight on how one achieves that? How can men, if there's a man listening now that is lost, like how can he quote unquote see the light and transition into that way of being?
Well, that takes like I said earlier, it takes stepping outside of yourself and looking at yourself and judging whether you like what you see or not, right? And if you like what you see or if you don't like what you see, then you basically have to again go into a space where you are surrounded by a different environment. Like a lot of times men gets their idea of what manhood looks like from what they're seeing. So if you are surrounded by people who have the ideologies of the manosphere, you're going to try and go in that direction to try and be a man, right? To learn what to do and all the other stuff. Like, you know what I mean? If you're not religious, you're not going to go to the Bible, right? But you're going to go to what is popular, what seems to be the right thing, which is usually the majority rules type situation. If a lot of people are agreeing with it, then it must be right. So you're going to go with the manosphere because that is what is like a big idea, right? Yeah. So if you surround yourself with a different type of masculine energy, like, you know what I mean? Like go into schools and speak to professors. Like, you know what I mean? Men who are not on podcasts, and, go to therapy. You'll see a different energy. You'll feel the energy from that person just being in the presence of a man who is connected with his feminine. You know what I mean? You have to surround yourself with a different type of man to see the stark difference. You'll get to see what confidence truly looks like and where it comes from. And you can't be afraid to ask questions. You know what I mean? Like actually going into looking for a mentor is what I suggest if you need that personal guidance. So I would say whether it's a therapist, some guys don't want to go to therapy, that's fine. But find a mentor. A mentor could be a professor, an older man, someone your age, whatever, whoever you feel comfortable speaking to. You know what I mean? And surround yourself with a different type of man. Like I can say right now that the men of this particular day and age are a stark difference from the men in my family, my uncles. Maybe it's because they was born in a different generation. I don't know, but they completely different. Completely different. The way that they think, the way they dress, the way they are loyal to their wives, like that's it. It's just very, very different. So I know that it exists. It's out there, but the manosphere is just really, really loud to where they kind of overshadow other men. But there's definitely men out there who are in touch with their feminine side, and they know who they are.
What I'm hearing is it's important for those type of men to be vocal, in their own way. Maybe not have their own podcast, but to be out there and actively available to mentor. I think
Yeah,
sometimes.
so that's a call for two types of men. So not just the one who needs help, right? But the one who like you see how right now you are here and you're talking to people. You know what I mean? To spread knowledge, to give out guidance, like just your videos in itself can be a starting point for any person who wants to deconstruct their conditioning. Like, you know what I mean? It starts there. And then it can be something as simple as sending a DM, but just men like you who already have common sense, because that's what I call it, common sense, and just being available for those who are lost. Like, you know what I mean? Like the generation behind you, even if they're only like 4 to 5 years younger than you, you have to be available to those men as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Arcane Solver says libraries.
Library, no, but we got to be realistic. Like, yes, the libraries are there, but if you got to remember, this is a sickness, it's a mental illness. So if you think that everything's okay, and then all of a sudden you find that everything you've ever known was wrong, right? And you want to fix it, but you don't know what to do, a library is not really going to help you in that way. What's going to help you is an example. Like, we have to be able to see something that we can emulate. Like, I know a lot of people can come into the knowledge of something, and what happens is you can easily do a reverse in your journey and become a hoarder of knowledge and get a big head and go into your ego and then end up exhibiting the same toxic traits that you did before, because your journey is incomplete, because you've only gotten to the first step of just reading, of just understanding that something is wrong. That's only the beginning. That's like the first step of awakening into a new consciousness. You know what I mean? Just like a lot of Black people who can just come into realizing that this country is corrupt or whatever, if they stay in that first level of consciousness, that is what causes a lot of people to be in the victim mindset, because they never progress after that. Well, now everything is, well, I'm not responsible for nothing that happens in my life, because everything is because of the white power structure. Everything is because, you know what I mean? So when you stay in that first level of consciousness of, oh, well, I'm just gonna learn, what's wrong, you can be stuck there and your whole journey could stop there. You know what I mean? So you have to make sure you're around people as well to help pull you forward.
No, absolutely. Asa says often we're operating in fear and won't admit it. Belladonna says we have to be comfortable with our own company. I think both of those points are important. And I think that fear-based response, once you get into a lot of information, sometimes it can be overwhelming, and it causes paralysis.
Yes.
Because you bombard, you have new information, but you haven't quite learned how to live it out, right? And how that transitions and changes into a different way to think, a different way to breathe, and a different way to be. Absolutely.
Yes, it's important to remember that we are eternal students, right? Never get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, now I know, and then that's it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We always have to make sure we're always learning. So that means incorporating different methodologies. Self-isolation is one. Creating a community or joining a community is another, which of course would be the quote-unquote cult, right? But, reading is another, mindfulness is another, meditations, all these things is all steps on a ladder. You know what I mean?
I wanted to circle back to that because I think because we've grown up a lot in dysfunction, dysfunctional families, but also dysfunctional communities. I don't know if a lot of us know what a working community looks like. Like what are some attributes of a working community, and what are some ways that you know that you're in a dysfunctional community?
Well, one of the things that I do is compare and contrast. So right now, how many of us can walk outside of our door and name every person that lives on our block?
Not I, said the pros.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many of us that if we were to leave our vessel today and transition, who would know in our community, or would our bodies be left in our houses for some time until there's a smell or until mail starts piling up? You know what I mean? And I'm talking about people who live by themselves, you know? Yeah. So it's what to understand what a community is, a working community is understanding that I like to call it tribes, right? Tribes is much better for me to understand. It's much easier for us to understand that a tribe is just an extended family. So once you understand that, an extended family, then you are a community, then you're a society, blah, 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 right? So understanding that is kind of like your cousin. It's kind of like when you go into a all-white space and you see a couple of black people or two black people, you have this, right. You know, like all of a sudden that's your cousin. But but if it was all of us, all black people, it's not the same. Now everybody's strangers. You know what I mean? So in order to create a community, we have to create a familiarity where we are comfortable speaking and being and relating to each other in a way that creates safe spaces for us to exist. You know what I mean? So we have to be able to create that. Right now, we have been living in this individualistic society where everything is about me or you, and the nuclear family is just your tribe, just y'all. However many kids you can pop out is your tribe, and that's all that matters. And because we have come to the idea of, well, it's just me and mines, that's all I care about. That's why we don't have community. Yes, we live around people, yeah, but that's not our community. So it's very simple to create community. We kind of just have to look at everybody as our family. You know what I mean? Do the stuff we see on movies. When somebody move in, go bring them, you know, some Big Mac and cheese or something, you know, and be like, hey, how you doing? I live over here, and this is, you know, and create the community. One of the things I would love to do is create a community of people of like minds, like all of us who are dismantling the patriarchy. That's the community that we need to be coming together and creating resources for each other. We each have gifts, right? We each have gifts, and we each have something to offer because our existence is here to offer something for another. So we can actually get out of this particular system and capitalism once we start trading our gifts to each other. You know what I mean? Services, gifts, whatever we have that we do, we have to start communing with each other to where we're not dependent as a nation. So community is very, very important, but it takes us being able to look at the next person and see ourselves.
No, absolutely. And that flies in contrast with the I'm only protecting what's mine. You know what I mean? When we had the this whole all of 2023, that was, you know, protect black women on one side and say, well, I'm only going to protect my black woman. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
The people that belong to me.
This is why I stayed off the internet, because I was just like, I can't speak to these people because that kind of mindset, it bothers me so bad. And I just stayed out of that conversation because I can't.
Yeah, it literally is anti-community. If you right. only care about what's in your little corner, you don't care about the community.
Right. The community itself is a very ancient mentality. The ancient mentality is it's nationhood. It's, oh, this is my tribe, this is my people. People was able to look at their entire tribe, their entire society as their people, and would protect all of those people as if it was their sons, cousins, brothers, aunties. You know what I mean? That's what a community looks like.
Whoever wins is the one that writes the history. How did they do it will forever be a mystery. Winning is the mindset you keep when you won't accept defeat. And I repeat, I'm the creator of my sheet. I got some images in my head I don't bother to touch. Anxious cause you don't know who is who and what is what. Setting fires to bridges, yeah, I'm keeping all doors shut. Find solace in being separate cause it's therapeutic. So when you're claiming that you victim, make sure you're the plaintiff. You gon' hear me when I tell you I ain't nothing to play with. I sing it to you in a soft tone, but I got grit. Heard some niggas been talking and listen to what they said, and I'm just mad that she ain't give it to me. And that girl Yon was great when I liked her, but now she ain't with a thing. He said he ain't a fan of marriage, but he passing out rings. Fraudulent, making money, selling off bad dreams. I'm locked up in my head thinking I'm toxic. If you talking down bad, then you may as well just gon' switch up your topic. I ain't got no love for you, gon' stop it. You a thespian and putting up in that, gon' drop it.